The castle of Nordvell stood like a spectre on the edge of a frozen world, its spires rising into a sky perpetually cloaked in the pale light of winter. Within its frost-rimmed halls, Princess Eira wandered, her footsteps echoing faintly against stone as cold as her solitude. The days stretched long and silent, her only companions the chill winds that whispered through the high arched windows. Her life was a landscape of muted greys, where laughter and warmth had faded like dreams upon waking. But as the sun retreated each evening, surrendering the heavens to the silver radiance of the moon, the silence of Nordvell would give way to a sound both haunting and beautiful. A single note would drift through the air, soft and unbidden, as though carried by the frost-kissed breeze itself. And then, as if summoned by some unseen magic, a tiny winter wren would appear on the stone sill of Eira's chamber window. The wren was unlike any creature Eira had ever known. Its feathers shimmered as though dusted with frost, catching the moonlight in a delicate iridescence. And its song, oh, its song, was a melody spun from the threads of longing and solace, a tune that seemed to know the depths of her heart. When it sang, the walls of the castle faded away, and Eira felt for a fleeting moment that she was no longer alone. Each night, the wren came. She named it Lyric, for no other word seemed fitting for a creature whose very presence was music. It perched upon her windowsill, its bright eyes watching her as its song filled the room. The melody was always the same, yet never did it lose its magic. It spoke to her in a language beyond words, soothing her fears, cradling her heart, and drawing her into a peaceful slumber. Eira never questioned Lyric's presence, though she wondered often from where it had come. She felt, in some unspoken way, that the wren was meant for her, that its song was a gift meant to ease the ache she carried. She had long ceased to ask for more than the brief joy it brought her each night. Some mysteries, she thought, were too precious to unravel. Yet, even as the wren became her nightly companion, its existence seemed to deepen the melancholy of her days. For when the sun rose and Lyric's song faded, the castle felt colder, emptier, as if its presence had cast a light on the shadows of her loneliness. Eira would often find herself at the window during the day, staring at the empty sill where Lyric perched each night, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she could not keep it with her always. The kingdom beyond the castle walls was a barren expanse of ice and snow, a place she had not ventured into since she was a child. The forest that bordered the horizon seemed like a world apart, its dark trees shrouded in mist, their silhouettes haunting against the white expanse. Eira had heard tales of the forest, of strange creatures and hidden dangers, but they had always felt distant, belonging to another life. Lyric too felt like something out of those stories, a fragment of a world she could never truly touch. And so the nights passed, each one marked by Lyric's arrival and the fleeting joy it brought. The castle, for all its cold and silence, began to feel a little less empty. Eira would sit by the window, waiting for the first note of the wren's song, her heart lifting as it filled the air. It became a ritual, one she came to treasure above all else. But beneath her quiet contentment lay a fragile fear, a whisper at the edge of her thoughts. What would she do, she wondered, if the song ever ceased? Eira shook the thought from her mind, unwilling to entertain it. Lyric was there now, and its song was hers to keep, at least for this moment. And in the quiet stillness of the castle, as the moonlight painted her chamber in silver hues, Eira allowed herself to believe that the melody would never fade. Little did she know, the wren's song was more than a gift. It was a harbinger, and the moment it fell silent, her world would change forever. The night the silence began was no different from any other, or so it seemed. The moon hung heavy in the sky, its argent light casting long shadows across the castle's frost-bitten stones. Eira sat by the window, her fingers tracing idle patterns on the icy panes as she waited for Lyric's familiar song to weave its way through the stillness. But no song came. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Eira's breath fogged the glass as she leaned closer, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the window. The forest loomed in the distance, its jagged outline against the pale snow seeming somehow sharper, more foreboding. The wren's absence carved a hollow ache in her chest, one she had not anticipated. She had grown so used to Lyric's nightly visits that the very thought of its absence felt wrong, as though the world itself had tilted off its axis. "Lyric," she whispered, her voice trembling in the cold air. "Where are you?" But the only answer was the mournful sigh of the wind, brushing against the castle walls like the ghost of a forgotten lullaby. Eira remained by the window long into the night, her eyes heavy with unshed tears. Even as sleep threatened to claim her, she resisted, clinging to the faint hope that Lyric would yet appear, its song breaking through the suffocating quiet. Morning arrived, pale and indifferent, casting its indifferent light over the castle. Eira awoke in her chair, her body stiff and cold. Her first thought was of the wren. She rushed to the window, hoping against hope that it might have come while she slept. But the sill was empty, its surface dusted only with frost. Days turned into weeks, each night marked by the same aching silence. The absence of Lyric's song began to unravel something within Eira, as though the threads of her very being were loosening. The castle grew colder, the shadows longer, and her once palatable solitude became an unbearable weight. Even her dreams betrayed her, haunted by fragments of melody that dissolved the moment she reached for them. It was during one of these restless nights that Eira began to notice the change. At first, it was subtle, the faintest murmur in the wind, a sound too soft to place. Then it grew, becoming whispers that curled around her like tendrils of mist. They were not voices exactly, but something older, something primal, resonating in a language that defied comprehension. The whispers spoke of the forest. She tried to ignore them, telling herself they were nothing more than the product of her restless mind. But the longer she resisted, the stronger they became, pulling at her thoughts like unseen hands. The forest, they seemed to say. The answers lie within the forest. It was a foolish notion. The forest was a place of legend, a realm of secrets and dangers that no one dared to venture into lightly. Eira had heard the stories as a child, of travelers who wandered too far and were never seen again, of strange lights that lured the unwary into eternal twilight. Yet, as the whispers persisted, she found herself unable to dismiss them. Her heart, already aching from the loss of Lyric's song, now throbbed with a new and unrelenting pull. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, Eira made her decision. She wrapped herself in a thick cloak lined with fur and took nothing but a lantern and a knife, the small comforts of someone walking into the unknown. The castle, with its lifeless halls and frozen silence, seemed to watch her as she stepped out into the snow, its towering silhouette fading behind her. The forest awaited. As she approached its edge, the air grew colder, the kind of cold that seeped into her very bones. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their branches entwined to form a canopy that seemed to swallow the moonlight. The whispers, once faint, now grew louder, guiding her deeper into the shadows. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the snow sought to anchor her, to pull her back to the safety of what she had known. But Eira pressed on, driven by something she could not name. Somewhere, in the depths of the forest, was the answer to the question that had taken root in her soul. What had become of Lyric? And why had the wren's song, which had seemed eternal, fallen silent? The trees seemed to close in around her, the air thick with a strange tension. Eira tightened her grip on the lantern, its flickering light barely piercing the darkness. She could feel the forest watching her, its gaze heavy and inscrutable. And as she took another step, the whispers coalesced into something new, a single haunting note that hung in the air like a thread of silver. The song was calling her. Eira's breath caught, her heart pounding as she moved toward the sound. The forest, once vast and impenetrable, now seemed to guide her, its paths unfolding as if in recognition of her purpose. She knew with a certainty that defied reason that she was closer to the truth than ever before. But the forest was not a place of simple answers. It was a place of secrets, and Eira was about to uncover the first of many. The air inside the forest was heavier, dense with an unspoken energy that wrapped around Eira like a shroud. The trees stood close, their gnarled branches knitting together in a canopy so thick it swallowed the moonlight whole. Her lantern cast trembling shadows across the frost-dusted ground, and with every step, the crunch of snow beneath her boots seemed louder than it should have been, as though the forest itself was listening. The whispers had not ceased. If anything, they had grown stronger, threading through the air like an unseen current, guiding her deeper into the labyrinth of trees. They were not words, not exactly, but sounds that hinted at meaning, at times like distant laughter, at others like the soft sobs of a child. They pulled her forward, urging her past her fear, past her hesitation. As she walked, Eira began to notice signs, small, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably deliberate. A feather, pale as the first frost, lay atop a bed of moss. Further along she found another, its edges glimmering faintly in the lantern's light. Lyric, she thought, her chest tightening. It was a breadcrumb trail, a silent promise that she was not wandering aimlessly. But the forest was not kind to intruders. The deeper Eira ventured, the more it seemed to shift around her, its paths twisting and doubling back on themselves. Trees that should have been familiar became strangers, their shapes contorted into eerie silhouettes. At times, she could have sworn she heard footsteps behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing but the vast, unyielding dark. Still she pressed on, clutching the lantern as though its flickering flame was the last thread connecting her to the world she knew. The cold bit at her skin, sharp and unforgiving, but she barely noticed it. Her thoughts were consumed by the mystery of Lyric's disappearance, the gnawing ache of its absence propelling her forward. The whispers led her to a clearing, a small circle of space where the trees parted to reveal a strange sight. In the center of the clearing stood an archway formed from the twisted branches of two ancient oaks. The arch glowed faintly, its surface etched with frost that shimmered like starlight. It was not natural. Of that, Eira was certain. It pulsed with an energy that hummed against her skin, a silent invitation, or perhaps a challenge. Her breath caught as she approached the archway, her lantern trembling in her grasp. The whispers had grown silent, as though holding their breath. The only sound was the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, loud and insistent in the stillness. Eira hesitated at the threshold, her instincts warring with her determination. She knew, without fully understanding how, that stepping through the arch would take her somewhere else, somewhere beyond the world she had always known. It was a place whispered of in fairy tales and old songs, a realm where the veil between magic and reality was thin, where the rules of the mortal world no longer applied. But Lyric was beyond that threshold. She could feel it, as surely as she felt the cold seeping through her cloak. Taking a deep breath, Eira stepped forward. The moment she passed through the arch, the air changed. It was warmer, yet sharp, with an electric chill that prickled against her skin. The ground beneath her feet glittered like powdered glass, and the sky above was an endless expanse of shifting colours, auroras that danced and swirled, painting the heavens in hues of blue, green, and gold. Before her stretched a landscape unlike any she had ever seen. Snow-covered hills rolled into the distance, their surfaces glinting like diamonds. A river of liquid silver wound its way through the valley, and in the far distance, a palace of crystalline spires rose into the sky, its surface catching the auroras and refracting them into 1,000 dazzling fragments. Eira's breath hitched. This was no ordinary place. It was a world of frost and magic, a realm that seemed to hum with life and song. Yet, for all its beauty, there was an undercurrent of something darker, something hidden beneath the surface. As she took her first tentative steps into this new world, a familiar sound reached her ears. A single, haunting note, clear and pure as winter's first breath. It hung in the air, pulling at her heart like a thread. Lyric's song. Eira's pulse quickened as she followed the sound, her lantern forgotten at her side. The path ahead seemed to unfold of its own accord, guiding her toward the source of the melody. The whispers were gone, replaced by the soft hum of the realm itself, as though it were alive and watching her. Ahead, in the shadow of the crystalline palace, a tiny figure waited. It was Lyric, or what remained of the Wren she had known. Its form shimmered, its feathers now a mantle of frost and light, its eyes filled with a wisdom that had not been there before. Eira stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The wren opened its beak, and its voice, no longer a simple song but something deeper, more profound, spoke into the stillness. "You have come," it said, its tone both sorrowful and resolute. "And now the truth awaits you." The wren shimmered before her, no longer a mere bird, but a creature of frost and starlight. Its presence was both comforting and unsettling, its radiance casting delicate patterns of light on the snow beneath its perch. Eira stood frozen, her gaze locked on Lyric, as though afraid that any movement might shatter the fragile connection between them. "You have come," Lyric repeated, its voice a song woven from whispers and wind. "But the path you have chosen will demand more than courage. Do you understand this, Eira?" The princess swallowed hard, her hands trembling at her sides. "I don't understand anything," she admitted, her voice barely more than a breath. "Why did you stop singing? Why did you leave me?" Lyric tilted its head, its eyes, deep pools of moonlight, seeming to peer into the very fabric of her soul. "My song was not mine to give freely. It was a gift borrowed from this realm, a piece of its magic entrusted to me to bring comfort to those who wander in solitude. But the balance of this world is fragile, and my absence has left it vulnerable. I was called back when the harmony was broken. Eira's heart ached at the wren's words. Broken? By what? Lyric spread its shimmering wings, gesturing toward the crystalline palace that loomed in the distance. A shadow has crept into the heart of this realm, twisting the magic into something it was never meant to be. The melodies that sustain it are unraveling, and with them, the fragile bond between winter and the world beyond. If it is not mended, both realms will suffer. Eira's gaze drifted to the palace. Its beauty now seemed cold, forbidding, like a crown of ice atop a dying kingdom. And what am I supposed to do? She asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. I'm just a girl from a frozen castle. I don't know anything about magic or harmony. Lyric hopped closer, its glow brightening. The song I gave you was not a simple melody. It was a thread connecting you to this place, to its rhythms and secrets. You are not here by chance, Eira. The same solitude that called to me called to this realm, binding your heart to its essence. You are part of its harmony, and only you can help restore it. The wren's words hung in the air, their weight pressing against Eira's thoughts. She wanted to protest, to deny the impossible task being laid at her feet. But something in her heart stirred. A faint, steady pulse that felt like the echo of Lyric's song. It had been there all along, she realized, waiting to be heard. What do I have to do? She asked, her voice firm now, the fear tempered by determination. Lyric turned its gaze to the palace once more. Within those walls lies the heart of this realm, a place where the magic of frost and song is woven into its very being. But the shadow has taken root there, feeding on the discord it has sown. You must confront it, Eira, and restore the harmony it has stolen. The path to the palace was unlike any Eira had traversed before. It shifted and shimmered as she walked, the ground sparkling like a river of shattered glass. The air was thick with a quiet hum, a melody just beyond the edge of hearing, and the auroras above seemed to pulse in time with her steps. Lyric flew ahead, its glow a beacon in the strange, ever-changing landscape. As they approached the palace gates, Eira felt a strange energy coursing through her, as though the very air was alive with anticipation. The gates opened soundlessly at their approach, revealing an interior of breathtaking beauty. A vast hall of crystalline walls and vaulted ceilings, every surface reflecting the shifting light of the auroras. At the center of the hall stood a grand, glowing instrument, a harp crafted of ice and silver, its strings shimmering like frozen moonbeams. But the harp was not whole. Its strings were tangled and frayed, their discordant vibrations filling the air with an unsettling hum. The harp of winter, Lyric said softly, alighting on a pedestal near the instrument. It is the heart of this realm. Its song weaves the magic that sustains both worlds. But the shadow's touch has corrupted it. and only you can untangle the threads. Eira approached the harp cautiously, her reflection distorted in its icy surface. As she reached out, she felt the weight of its song, or rather, the broken remnants of it. It was a melody torn apart, its harmony shattered, and as her fingers brushed the strings, a wave of sorrow and longing surged through her. "Listen, Eira," Lyric urged. "The song still lives within you. Remember it, and let it guide you." Closing her eyes, Eira let the memory of Lyric's nightly melodies wash over her. She began to hum, her voice trembling at first, then growing stronger as the fragments of the song came together in her mind. Her hands moved instinctively, plucking the strings and untangling the threads of magic woven into the harp. Eira stood in silence, the weight of Lyric's words settling over her like a mantle of snow. The truth was harsh, but it was also liberating. For the first time in her life, she felt as though she understood herself, her pain, and her place in the world. "I promise," she said finally, her voice steady despite the tears that traced icy trails down her cheeks. "I promise to tend the harmony, in this realm and in my own heart. I won't let the shadow return." Lyric tilted its head, its eyes gleaming with approval. "Then the song will endure, and so will you." As the words left the wren's beak, the harp began to glow brighter, its light spreading through the hall and beyond. Eira felt the warmth of it enveloping her, lifting her from the icy ground. The realm shimmered and shifted, its crystalline beauty dissolving into a cascade of light. Before she could grasp what was happening, the world tilted, and she found herself standing once more in her chamber at Nordvell Castle. The frost on the windows had melted, replaced by delicate patterns of light that danced across the panes. The air was warmer, filled with a faint hum that reminded her of Lyric's song. She turned toward the window, her heart heavy with the bittersweet realization that the wren was gone. But as she stepped closer, she heard it. A single note, soft and pure, carried on the wind. It was followed by another and then another, until the melody she had thought lost forever rose once more, filling the room with its haunting beauty. Eira smiled, her hand pressed against the glass. Lyric's song would always be with her, not just in the nights to come, but in the harmony she carried within herself. The frost and the song were one, and she was their keeper, bound to their magic by a promise that would never fade.